The president of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, yesterday maintained his innocence over allegations of fraud and breach of code of ethics of the bank leveled against him by whistleblowers. Now, our Rise News sisters, our sister outfit This Day, reported that Dr. Adesina is saying in a statement that he remained confident that ultimately, and as one collective entity, that the bank would emerge stronger than before, and also, of course, continue to support Africa's development drive. Now, despite being cleared of the allegations by the AfDB Ethics Committee, United States Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin had called for an independent investigation into the exact same allegations. Now, the AfDB board has vowed that the pressure from the United States, the third largest shareholder after Nigeria and Egypt, and has agreed to an independent probe of Adesina. Now, the US had rejected an internal investigation that cleared him of allegations of wrongdoing. Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Finland are among countries that wrote to the AfDB to back the US demands for professional outsiders to look into the allegations, according to Bloomberg. But the African Development Bank has described the allegations as unprecedented attempts by some to tarnish Adesina's reputation and prejudice the bank's governance procedures. So Dr. Adesina has, of course, reaffirmed or maintained his innocence in all of this. But, of course, this independent investigation, Doctor, is going to still go ahead. What is your take on this development?
Well, the last time the president of the African Development Bank, former Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development in Nigeria, Dr. Akin Adesina, responded to these allegations was on April 6, when he said that, look, he was clearly in support of the investigation with regard to those allegations, and that he was very sure that he would be vindicated at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And on May 5, the Ethics Committee issued a report exonerating him, absolving him of all blames on all the grounds in terms of the allegations that have been leveled against him. First in January 11, 2020. Now, by March 6, the group of concerned staff, as they call themselves, who had raised allegations against him, accused the Ethics Committee of refusing to look into the matter. Now, what were they talking about? They were talking about abuse of office, infractions relating to the violation of the Code of Ethics of the African Development Bank, favoritism, nepotism, undue attention to Nigeria, and, a host of allegations, including their claim that he had turned himself into a travel champion of the AfDB, and that he was using his office to collect awards and prizes across the world, and also to lobby heads of states and government. Now, the Ethics Committee, of course, then began to look into the allegations. But by March 13, there was a counter-protest by a group that called itself the Group of Indignant Members. And those members who wrote this counter-petition pointed to the fact that the whole conspiracy against Adesina, as they defined it, was not in the best interest of the African development, but an attempt to discredit Akinwumi Adesina as president of the AfDB. And they pointed at an American as the person behind it, Stephen Dowd, a member of the Ethics Committee and also an executive director of the bank. And so from that moment, a group within the AfDB established that perhaps there was an American conspiracy against Akinwumi Adesina. But as I said earlier, on May 5, eventually, he was completely exonerated. On April 6, about the same time that he issued a statement saying he was willing to be investigated, the group of concerned staff also issued another statement, adding to the allegations. But in any case, by May 5, he was exonerated. Now, what has happened with the American petition now will seem to be a confirmation of the earlier suspicion of the position of the group of indignant members of the AfDB that America has a hand in the conspiracy against Akinwumi Adesina. And this has been confirmed by the statement by Stephen Mnuchin, the Secretary of the Treasury of the United States. So let's break it down. What are the issues here? One, What I see here is America trying to dominate every international institution in which it is a member. We have seen it with WHO. We have seen it with the agreement on climate change. We have seen it with the trade agreements in North America. And we have seen American unilateralism being enforced more under President Donald Trump. Two, if you look at the history of the African Development Bank, now Nigeria is the biggest shareholder. Nigeria has 9% of the shareholding of that bank. And also, you know, that bank has regional members. It has non-regional members. In terms of numbers, the regional members, that's the African countries, the biggest shareholders from Africa are Nigeria, Egypt, and Algeria, in that order. And they have, you know, total voting power of over 3 million. And, total votes of over 3 million. And then voting power, because the voting is weighted. So the voting power that they have is about, it's over 50%. It's about 59% of the votes. Now, the non-regional members, they are led by the United States. The United States has about more than 16%, you know, of the voting power. And their total aggregate, all the non-regional members, the leading ones being the United States, followed by Japan, followed by Germany, and I think Norway and the Netherlands. They have about 41% if you weigh the votes and the voting power. In terms of voting, total votes, they have just over 2 million. So there is geopolitics involved, and that's why I say that going forward, Nigeria should take a special interest in this matter of the African Development Bank. Because since the African Development Bank was established in 1964, Nigeria only got a chance to become president of the AfDB in 2015, when Adesina was elected. In 2005, we lost to Donna Kaberuka of Rwanda. The man who represented Nigeria at that time was one Ogunjobi, but Nigeria didn't provide the necessary support. President Buhari should take this as a matter of national interest and national integrity and support Adesina and mobilize both regional and non-regional members to ensure that America does not impose its own whims and caprices, its own will on the African Development Bank. That is the danger that we run. In terms of achievement, I think it's important to know this, that under Akinwumi Adesina, the AfDB has done well in the last 5 years. It is richer today than it has ever been. It is more decentralized. It is more people-oriented. And Adesina has also been able to use his position to promote partnership and the idea of African development. Now, this should be the issue. That the moment he said he wanted a second term, the Americans moved in and they want to dictate. I do not think that they should be allowed. And you can see already that they are moving ahead. Norway and some other countries are beginning to support them. Now, Nigeria too should move into the game and make sure that our man remains that position. If Rwanda could keep that position for 2 terms, and Morocco under Omar Kabaj can keep that position, there's no reason why Nigeria should lose that position.
Certainly, Doctor. On that note, let's take a quick break on the morning show. And when we are back, we will have our trio, Rota Sidiri, Michael Wilson, and Aaron Akerijola, here to give us updates on Africa and global business as well as COVID-19. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Now joining us with a business update from Africa is Rotus Odire, Arise News business analyst. Good morning.
Good morning, Rotus. How are you today?
Good morning to everybody. So, coming out of Africa, I have to start with the giant of Africa. The central bank sent out a tweet yesterday and a circular stating that there are COVID-19 facilities that are supposed to be assisting folks that have been, struggling with it, that they've extended to households and businesses. Is now going to be available, relief facilities also going to be available for OFIs, which are other financial institutions. So essentially what we've seen, what the central bank has extended to other financial institutions, to banks, to households, to businesses, in that the facilities that they have, there's a moratorium starting from March the 1st through for the 1-year moratorium for a year, 400 basis points reduction in the interest rate that will be paid, which is 9% down to 5%. This will now be also extended to OFIs, other financial institutions like mortgage banks and so on, and other microfinance banks. So they're expanding the net. If you remember, a lot of folks have said that what the CBN is doing is commendable, trying to assist all these sectors, but we need to expand the net as much as possible. So this is a move in that direction by including the OFIs, the other financial institutions, in that net. So that's what's on the central bank side. Also onto power, the presidency sent out a tweet yesterday giving some details, saying that they've directed the ministries and Power Ministry, Finance Ministry, and the Bureau of Public Enterprise to conclude the engagement with Siemens to conclude the PPI, the President's Power Initiative. Some key things in their tweets. They also said that the presidency has directed that to ensure value and preserve the integrity and transparency. Key thing on transparency. It's a government-to-government framework. So they are working directly with the German government, with Siemens. And so it says Siemens AG shall be solely responsible for nominating EPC partners, that's engineering, procurement, and construction partners, to perform all onshore works. No middlemen. None. It's directly with them.
Good that they've clarified this.
Yeah, they've clarified that. So there's a gentleman I follow. I actually don't know who he is. His name is Andrew Footy, but he's an analyst that a lot of people that I respect in the financial sector follow him on Twitter. So I've been following him for a while. But he put some key things there. He said key learnings over the last 12 months on delivering public initiatives. 1, country-to-country agreements. 2, no middlemen. And if this means no Nigerian companies, so be it. I don't really entirely agree with number 2. Some people might have problems because of knowledge transfer. If you have experts working, you want to be sure that Nigerian companies can benefit from that. So there might be some issues with number 2. But 3, deal only with the original equipment manufacturers and rule out so-called technical partnerships because of issues of integrity, transparency, and so on and so forth. Presidency then sent another tweet. This one is very interesting for the president. To ensure fairness and transparency of the intervention, the president has also, that's President Buhari, directed that the government engage the IFC, the International Finance Corporation, to assist in developing the commercial structure of the intervention. This is for power. The discos are involved. Under the Presidential Power Initiative, they are going to be evaluating the discos. So Andrew then sends another tweet, which I thought was funny. He then says, we're about to hear stories that touch. Get ready. Or the IFC will carry out an independent valuation of the discos as part of developing the convertible loan terms and structure of PPI. Convertible loans are essentially instruments you can convert to equity to stocks. It's a structure that you can use for deals and so on. So we're about to see what the real numbers are for the discos. So on the part of the government, remember this was Angela Merkel and President Buhari getting together to put this together back in late 2018. The late Abi Kyari, may he rest in peace, was in Germany trying to secure the electrification process and so on. So things are moving forward. But the key things to take away here: no middlemen, government to government. Have some issues with taking out Nigerian companies though because of knowledge transfer, and that the IFC, the government is engaging them to properly evaluate the discos, look at their numbers. So interesting times ahead when those figures start to come out. But power, 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 that's the key to our economy growing. We have to get 24/7 power as soon as possible. Okay,
a number of comments. The first is as follows. When I saw the story about the CBN saying that it's reducing 9% on its intervention facilities interest from 9% to 5%, the first question that occurred to me is that what is different from what the CBN did in March?
Right.
But, I think you have clarified that it's trying to expand, the net.
Yes.
Because a few weeks ago, when you brought up a similar topic, we had talked about how microfinance banks, have suffered a lot in terms of on-service loans in the time of COVID-19. What the CBN had done for them previously was the policy in terms of their capital base. They gave them an extension, which was good. So it's nice to see them doing this. But the CBN will need to go further to see how it can further strengthen the capacity of the financial institutions to provide their credit. Now, many of the bankers, they may not be confident enough to come to the public to protest, because they will not want to take on the regulator. Right. But I know that there's a lot of whispering, there's a lot of murmurings, about how the CBN is engaging the financial institutions. And then tomorrow, of course, it's today. Yes, we are all looking forward to the outcome of the monetary policy.
Today, it will conclude tomorrow. So
it will conclude tomorrow.
Yes,
so we're looking forward to what will happen at the monetary policy committee meeting as to whether, Nigeria will try to follow the pattern that we have seen globally,
right,
or whether it will still maintain a cautious approach. Now, with regard to Siemens, yes, there's been a lot of talk about Siemens and meetings. I guess even when the late chief of staff contracted the coronavirus, he had gone to Germany for a meeting on this same power sector issue. But I think that the basic will be one: how would the government ensure that Nigerians get regular electricity, not just for household consumption, but also to drive the development process. Now, the distribution companies, the transmission companies, the generation companies in Nigeria are protesting a lot. It will be interesting to see what their reaction is to this new plan with Siemens.
Right.
I've not seen any reaction in any of the papers yet, but I guess it is important to ensure that, Nigeria does not hand everything over to Siemens. If they are handing over procurement and engineering and construction to Siemens. Now, there are other details that will need to be broken down because many of these foreign companies that come to do business in Nigeria, before you know it, it will translate into loss of jobs for Nigerians, and that cannot be the overall objective.
Right.
What government says is that, yes, Siemens succeeded in Egypt. We hope that it will succeed also in Nigeria,
yes.
and that the Nigerian factor will not sabotage this government-to-government partnership, as it has been called.
Well, we're hopeful.
We are. Brutus, thank you for this morning's update.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Moving on now for a more global business update, Michael Wilson joins us from London. Good morning, Michael. How are you today?
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Ruben. Looking at a lot of very red screen, to be honest, overnight from Asia, an uncertain backdrop, positivity one side about economies reopening, but once again, the United States and China, deteriorating relations there. And Hong Kong falling actually quite a lot towards the end of things. All a hangover also from the US markets today, which had a fairly choppy session, opening higher on optimism over parts of the US economy opening, as is shown in the beige book yesterday, the business prospects book, but also coping with those headwinds of rising tension between the US and China. And as if to highlight that, the US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo actually saying yesterday that the US no longer, and this is very important, longer considers Hong Kong an autonomous region, in other words, autonomous from China, which would mean that, therefore, the region would be subjected to the same sort of tariffs that apply to Chinese goods. And that really would be a problem for Hong Kong. Now, on the other side of this was something I was talking about yesterday. The real question, could Hong Kong actually survive should the relations between the United States and China really deteriorate? In other words, could it still survive as what it is, which is an exchange and also a gateway? I think the answer to that question actually is yes, it could. Reason being that Shanghai, according to people in London at least, is not really ready to take over as a major stock exchange, not necessarily market, but exchange. In other words, foreign investment coming in as well to help it to help the Chinese economy. So I think that Hong Kong has got quite a way to go. So therefore, the United States really closing quite above those various psychological points, but still doubts remaining. More threats against social media from President Trump. I've got a draft detail of some of them. It's quite interesting, actually. He's talking about Facebook, and he's talking about Twitter, and he's talking about Google, and the fact that they are at the moment exempt from any legal action, any responsibility for the material that they carry. He's hoping that the draft is, at least, that legal position may well change, which therefore could bring a load of lawsuits against both those giants. Now, the big one in Europe. Here's the fund we were talking about. It's 750 billion euros, 500 billion euro of that in grants, and 250 billion so far in debt. Now, we can say all these kind of things. Ursula von der Leyen, who is the CEO, if you like, of the European Union, was saying yesterday, this is Europe's moment. Well, it certainly is in lots of ways. I think that all this will get watered down. The markets have taken it extremely well. And we must do something, or Europe must do something about the economic shocks towards the weaker states, many of whom will argue that this is nothing to do with them. The virus has hit them. This is completely outside their fault, and therefore they feel that they need to get something from the project. Again, very much against what I was talking about yesterday. Again, the frugal four: Netherlands, Austria, Sweden, and Denmark, particularly Sweden, of course, not in the euro at all saying that no, you can't just be throwing money at these countries. There's got to be some discipline behind all this. If the euro is to succeed, then there will need to be some fiscal joining together, and that risks a rise of populism elsewhere. So what I'm trying to say is there's an enormous amount of politics in all this, and 27 countries have to agree to this. When in the real world do 27 countries ever agree about anything? There we go. UK, the Prime Minister...
Michael, hold your thoughts for just a moment. Let's take a very quick commercial break, and when we are back, we'll continue with this conversation. Stay with us. Michael Wilson is still with us in London. Back to you, Michael.
Thanks so much indeed. Yes, so just to return to what we were talking about, this is what I was talking about, this new fund, this recovery plan for the European Union, 750 billion euro. It sounds like a lot of money. In the big scheme of things, it isn't really. So that's number one. And there's a long, long way to go before all this is agreed. I can give you two examples of countries which will be discussing this between themselves, and also maybe even on the streets as the weather gets warmer. Italy and Spain, they've been hardest hit by COVID-19 deaths. They do not want debt added already largely indebted states, and would much prefer a grant. So all that's still got to be decided. Who wouldn't like some free money in any case? I certainly would. Now, UK. Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, pushing aside all the political stuff at the moment, is anxious to get back on course and talk about the economy. He's saying this morning he wants to double down on his efforts to restart our economy. That involves getting young people back into work, and also just a bigger employment support program. Again, this is all money which is being dreamt of, basically, because it's not real money. So there's further grants coming from the government. Finally, oil prices slightly down this morning. More capacity in the United States, more storage in the United States than originally thought. And finally, our old friend copper, keep an eye on that price gradually rising there. And that's always a very good and reliable thermometer for the health of the global economy.
Well, quickly, Michael, we have just about a minute to go. But the EU Recovery Fund, which the President of the European Commission says is Europe's moment, and which President Macron has also praised. Do you think that the plan is likely to work? The leaders of the EU are meeting in about 3 weeks' time. Will there be enough majority to support this plan, considering the fact that the German Parliament, if I may use that phrase, earlier in the month, declared that what is being proposed is a violation of the German constitution? And as we discussed yesterday, there are objections from other parts of the EU.
There are indeed, and Germany is openly questioning, as you quite rightly say, the European Central Bank with regards to its own constitution. It can do that. It's very doubtful as to whether within the whole gambit, if you like, of the EU, that objection will amount to very much legally. That's something in which, as you probably know, a lot of lawyers will make a huge amount of money of. Will it actually work? I think it'll probably be watered down a huge amount. These things normally are. It isn't a huge amount of money. It sounds like a lot. In the big and the scope of things in the whole drama of where we are with the EU. Lots of other change has to happen. There would have to be lots more fiscal agreement between states, some of which I mentioned, Italy and Spain, are not very happy to do that. So it's certainly Europe's moment, and I think a lot will depend on this.
Well, thank you very much, Michael Wilson. We look forward to seeing you again tomorrow morning.
Certainly.
Thank you.
And now for an update on COVID-19, Aaron Akirajola joins us here in our studios. Good morning, Aaron. How are you?
Good morning, Leila. Good morning, Doctor. You're back to black.
Yes, I am. And so are you.
You guys are color-coded.
Okay.
Was there a private memo?
No, she's predictable.
You didn't share with me.
I'm very
predictable. She's predictable. She's predictable. She's always on black.
You're a copycat.
Now, let's get straight into it. Like predicted yesterday, the U.S. figures have actually topped over 100,000. As of this morning, as a matter of fact, as of this morning, it's now 102,107 by the latest count as of 7:45 this morning, which the cases recorded 1,745,803. All right, with 490,000 recovered so far. When you look at the graph, you'll find out that a lot of people are saying that you can see the blue graph there shows the amount of testing that has been done, and testing has been increasing sporadically over the last few months, and you can actually see it there, and people are saying that's the reason why. We'll get to explain some of these things, because when you actually look at it, as a matter of fact, this has actually accounted for 30% of the global figures in terms of cases of COVID-19. You can see some of the states there which have been major hotspots for COVID-19 and the coronavirus incidences we've actually seen, with Washington having well over 20,000 and California having well over 99,000 cases. All right, Illinois, Michigan, New York has been is the most affected in the place. But some states in the last 1 week have been recording more cases. And when you look at this now, this is the total graph in terms of deaths and as against also the number of infections. Even though the U.S. have recorded well over 100,000 at the moment, they are 9th indicator of countries per capita in terms of infections. You can actually see there that the US has 30, that's 30 there, as against the UK has more, and also Italy, then not forgetting Spain and the likes of France, even Belgium. Of course, it's actually leading that particular per capita in terms of infection. So you look at this, the US actually recorded their first case on the 21st of January, and it has been back and front with Donald Trump at one point estimating that between 50 or 60,000 people will be infected. He actually increased the projection to 60 to 70,000. Now, at the moment, this is what you're staring at. You look at the global figures at the moment, it is 1,699,933. So it's really sad. It's really sad what we're seeing.
Really is. Did you hear what Joe Biden had to also say yesterday when he was giving his speech, and he said that if the president had taken action just a week sooner with regards to the pandemic, that America could have saved about 30,000 plus lives? I don't know what evidence that is based on, but quite frankly, when you look at their figures, it's chilling. And
Donald Trump, although had said something prior to this, long ago when he was being confronted with the same question, he said that if not for his administration and the way they handled this particular coronavirus and the pandemic, it would have been 25 times more than the number of figures we're actually recording. So that's what he says. But you and I know it's been back and forth ever since then.
President Trump will always give himself credit for everything, because he considers himself the most omniscient person on the surface of the earth at this moment. However, the point is about the quality of leadership that is provided from country to country. And what we have seen is that leadership matters. In this pandemic matter, as in everything else. And only yesterday, you were talking about Brazil.
Yes.
And how Jair Bolsonaro, the president of that country, has handled the situation. But in terms of the United States, I think the key question to be asked, both about the United States and parts of Europe, is whether or not the easing of the restrictions.
Yeah.
Because so many countries are easing the restrictions. Is that what is responsible, in particular, for the spike in the numbers? Because if you look at the Arab Gulf region, particularly in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, where the authorities have decided to ease the lockdown, the numbers have suddenly gone up too, in terms of deaths, total number of deaths in the Arab Gulf region is over 100,000. And it was not that high until you started having this easing of restrictions. I think what we can say to governments and political leaders is that in the countries where there has been easing of restrictions, the tracking of the seroprevalence should continue, so that if there is need to reverse policy, they should do so. Even here in Nigeria, we have seen the concern that has been expressed about the easing of the lockdown in parts of the country. And even at the moment, the conversation is still about easing the restrictions. We need to track it closely so that at the end of the day, we don't keep having casualties.
You have to increase public health response, because eventually economies are going to have to reopen all across the world. And the only way in which you can prevent yourself from suffering from this virus as much as possible is, of course, to just increase public health response. Look at, for example, the Bundesliga in Germany coming back. What are they doing with the players? They have to get tested over 2 times a week to make sure that they are okay. Even though that's a very small sect, at the end of the day, they're able to come back and play because they're increasing their public health response within their players and their teams. So, I mean,
All right.
But that will be relative to capacity.
Yeah, exactly. Always relative to capacity.
Because even now in Nigeria, I mean, what came out of the briefing yesterday is that Nigeria does not have enough bed spaces. The Presidential Task Force is calling for help.
Yes, they are.
Again, and many of the state governments are not able to respond adequately. Although, I don't want to say the good news that came out yesterday is that Kogi State, which had not been featuring on the league table, has now been reported to have 2 cases.
Two cases at the moment.
You can be sure that those cases are more than 2. And what you need to do in a place like Kogi State, for example, will be to ensure that, this public health ramping up that you talk about, in terms of testing, in terms of contact tracing, is taken there. At the moment, it's only Cross River State in the whole of Africa, if I may say so.
Yes.
That has not recorded any case, although I exaggerate in that case. But in Nigeria, definitely, is the only state that is still missing.
Since we're talking about response, Columbia University did a study, and Columbia University in New York, of course, did a study, and they say that if the Trump administration had actually acted sooner than they did in terms of some of this track and trace, in terms of lockdowns, in terms of restrictions of travels, that they would have actually been able to save 36,000 people from getting infected. So they are claiming that it would have been 36,000 less than the 102,000 we have as of this morning if they had done their job sooner and if they had responded faster than they did. And
well, President Trump was in denial.
Yes, he was at the earlier stage.
Time.
Yes.
And, he kept saying that it was a Chinese problem. But we have moved beyond that now. Although WHO is being blamed, China is being blamed, but what is clear is that, the pandemic is a global problem that requires global cooperation and that requires proactive action on the part of governments and institutions.
And that's where Africa actually comes into play, and that's why commendations and economists have been showered on African leaders for their responsiveness to COVID-19. I know you have a slight bias to us.
There's still a lot that we need to ramp up.
Yes, we still need to do, but at this stage of the pandemic, we still must be commended.
Certainly, we're not going to allow anybody to take it away from us. Nobody is going to try that. We have to be commended, certainly, but we also can't deceive ourselves. That is for sure. We have to ramp up on testing. There's so much we have to ramp up on.
Let's see how we'll still be taking it day-by-day basis.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, Aaron, thanks.
Thank you, Aaron.
All right,
we'll be here when the figures in Africa either go up or go down.
I hope not.